Don't speak. Those were the words the black cook whispered urgently to her billionaire boss, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. Moments earlier, she had stumbled into a scene she was never meant to see. The billionaire's husband, trusted by the world, admired in business circles, was doing something that could destroy everything. The cook's instincts screamed that one wrong move, one cry for help, could spark disaster. In that instant, the woman who had always been invisible in the mansion became the one person standing between betrayal and ruin. The billionaire's estate was a palace of glass and stone, perched high above the city with a view as commanding as its owner's reputation. She was a woman admired for her empire and envied for her wealth, a figure often photographed in glossy magazines with her charming husband at her side. To outsiders, they looked perfect. To staff inside the mansion, their lives were a daily performance of order, schedules, and silence. Among those staff was the cook, a black woman whose skill in the kitchen had fed hundreds of guests, but whose presence was rarely acknowledged beyond a nod or a brief instruction. Her days began before dawn, measuring spices and stirring pots while the city still slept. She had long ago learned that invisibility was the price of employment. In houses like this, workers weren't meant to be seen or heard. They were meant to blend into the background, erasing their own stories so the spotlight could shine brighter on their employers. For years, she played her role perfectly. But on one storm-dark evening, that silence shattered. The party upstairs had stretched late into the night. Laughter and champagne echoed in the halls while she scrubbed pans in the kitchen. Guests eventually left, their cars gliding down the driveway like shadows in the rain. The house grew quiet, except for footsteps in the corridor. Curious, she looked up from the sink just in time to see the billionaire's husband slip into the study, a manila folder tucked under his arm. Something about his manner, furtive, tense, pulled her toward the doorway. She shouldn't have followed. She knew it. But a force stronger than caution drew her near. From the crack in the study door, she saw everything. The husband wasn't working late. He was planting documents, false financial statements, doctored evidence that could frame his wife for crimes she hadn't committed. His face was twisted with malice, his muttered words confirming a plan to ruin her reputation and strip her empire bare. The cook's stomach turned cold. She wanted to scream, to run, but terror pinned her in place. When he left the study, smug and unsuspecting, she darted away unseen. But she knew silence could not last forever. The next morning, the billionaire reviewed her schedule, unaware that betrayal had crept into her own home. The cook wanted to speak, but fear gnawed at her. She had lived her whole life knowing that when a black woman accuses a powerful white man, the world doesn't rush to believe her. She had seen how stories get twisted, how truth is drowned by influence and prejudice. If she spoke without proof, she could lose her job, or worse. So she waited, watched, and gathered courage. For days, she noticed small signs. The husband's calls taken behind closed doors, the nervous pacing in the hall, the way his hand lingered possessively on documents that weren't his. Then one evening, the cook heard raised voices echoing down the marble corridor. The billionaire had discovered inconsistencies in her accounts, and her husband was cornered. His response wasn't denial, it was aggression. His words carried a threat, sharp and unmistakable. The cook's heart thundered as she rushed in, her phone clutched tight, recording everything. She caught his voice on tape, spewing plans and threats, his arrogance making him careless. The billionaire stood frozen, shock clouding her face. Before she could react, before she could scream, the cook stepped forward and whispered urgently, "Don't speak." Her warning was simple but powerful. Any protest could escalate the danger. Silence, for now, was survival. The recording became their lifeline. When security and lawyers were called, the husband tried to twist the narrative, painting himself as the victim, accusing the cook of lying, of plotting, of overstepping her station. Racism dripped from his tone, the suggestion that her word carried no weight. But the audio was undeniable. His own voice betrayed him. For once, truth was louder than privilege. The scandal broke. The billionaire's perfect marriage dissolved under the glare of public scrutiny. Yet what lingered longer than headlines was a private realization. Her empire had been saved not by her wealth, nor by her lawyers, but by the courage of a woman she had barely noticed. The cook, always relegated to shadows, had risked everything to protect her. In the weeks that followed, the billionaire's perspective shifted. She began to see the quiet injustices she had ignored, the subtle racism her staff endured, the invisible labor that sustained her fortune, the lives erased in service of her comfort. She invested in protections for her employees, demanded equity in her companies, and used her influence to challenge the silent prejudices that had nearly cost her everything. The cook, however, returned to her kitchen with quiet dignity. She didn't crave applause. She didn't seek reward. She only wanted safety, respect, and a recognition that her life and voice mattered. And though the mansion's routines resumed, something in its walls had changed forever. No one could erase the truth that when betrayal struck, it was the cook's courage, not the billionaire's power, that saved the day. If silence can protect injustice, then courage, even whispered in fear, can shatter it. The next time you see wrongdoing hidden in plain sight, will you stay quiet? Or will you find the strength to act when the world least expects it?